Hello, everybody. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. The reading for today, as you all know, having got here, is Descartes' Meditations. And I'm going to kind of read through it, probably in about 3 videos, and talk through what we read. So, in any case, I hope that this is a fun way to go through this material. I think that it's particularly fitting for this particular kind of material. Descartes is very much something that should be sort of read and thought about as you go. So, here we go. Some years ago, I was struck by the large number of falsehoods that I had accepted as true in my childhood, and by the highly doubtful nature of the whole edifice that I'd subsequently based on them. So, here what Descartes' saying is that he was thinking back a while ago, and he realized that there's a lot of things that he'd accepted as true as a child that he'd in fact based a lot of future beliefs on that he then later discovered were false. So we can sort of experience this in our own life by thinking about a time when we thought something was true and we based future decisions on that thing, only to discover at some point in the future the thing that we thought was true, in fact, wasn't. So in any case, continuing on. I realized that it was necessary, once in the course of my life, to demolish everything completely and start again right from the foundations if I wanted to establish anything at all in the sciences that was stable and likely to last. So here what Descartes' saying is that given that there were these things that he'd accepted as true that he later discovered were false, if he wants to discover anything that is stable and likely to last, as he puts it, he needs to demolish all of his beliefs and start again. But the task looked an enormous one, and I began to wait until I should reach a mature enough age to ensure that no subsequent time of life would be more suitable for tackling such inquiries. This led me to put the project off for so long that I would now be to blame if by pondering over it any further, I wasted the time still left for carrying it out. And here, of course, Descartes saying, hey, I put it off for a really long time, but I put it off for so long that I've realized if I put it off any longer, I might not get to it. So today, I've expressly rid my mind of all worries and arranged for myself a clear stretch of free time. I'm here, quiet, alone, and at last I'll devote myself sincerely and without reservation to the general demolition of all of my opinions. I think what's going on here is clear enough. But to accomplish this, it will not be necessary for me to show that all of my opinions are false, which is something I could perhaps never manage. So here Descartes saying that if what he needed to do was show that all of his opinions are false, this is something he might not ever be able to accomplish, right? Because he has so many different things that he thinks that to go through all of them would be impossible. So he's going to present his method that he's going to use. Reason now leads me to think that I should hold back my assent from opinions which are not completely certain and indubitable just as carefully as I do from those which are patently false. So here he's recognizing that, hey, I guess I can't accept things that are only potentially certain, right? Which is what he means when he says that he must hold back his assent from opinions which are not completely certain and indubitable, just as carefully from those which are patently false. So he's identifying that, hey, if I can't be absolutely certain, right, which he identifies here as indubitable, then he cannot accept the idea. So, for the purpose of rejecting all of my opinions, it will be enough if I find in each of them at least some reason for doubt. And to do this, I will not need to run through them all individually, which would be an endless task. Once the foundations of a building are undermined, anything built on them will collapse of its own accord. So I'll go straight for the basic principles on which all my former beliefs rested. So what Descartes' realizing is that, hey, if I attack the foundational beliefs, all of the beliefs that are built on those foundational beliefs will crumble. So if I'm trying to find what are my most certain beliefs, I should start with those very basic beliefs. Whatever I have up until now accepted as most true, I've acquired either from the senses or through the senses. But from time to time, I found the senses deceive, and it's prudent never to trust completely those who have deceived us even once. So we're looking at where we get our foundational beliefs from. And Descartes' first idea is, I bet I get my foundational beliefs from my senses, from the things that I experience in the world. But then when he's thinking about it, he realizes, it seems like my senses have deceived me in the past, right? And it's prudent never to trust completely those who have deceived us even once. Yet, although the senses occasionally deceive us with respect to objects which are very small or in the distance, there are many other beliefs about which doubt is quite impossible, even though they're derived from the senses. For example, that I'm here, sitting by the fire, wearing a winter dressing gown, holding this piece of paper in my hands, and so on. So Descartes started by realizing that maybe he can't trust his senses because they've tricked him sometimes. But then he starts thinking about when his senses have tricked him. And he realizes, well, look, sometimes my senses have tricked me if I'm looking at very small things or things that are very far away. But certainly my senses have not tricked me about the fact that I'm holding the piece of paper in my dressing gown, right, and sitting here by the fire. Certainly they couldn't be tricking me about that. Again, how could it be denied that these hands or this whole body are mine, unless perhaps I were to liken myself to madmen whose brains are so damaged by persistent vapors of melancholia that they firmly maintain they're kings that when they're paupers, or say they're dressed in purple when they're naked, or that their heads are made of earthenware, or that their pumpkins are made of glass. But such people are insane, and I would be thought equally mad if I took anything from them as a model for myself. So Descartes here is just suggesting that, hey, if I were to think that these things, the pad in my hands, my jacket, this world weren't real, people would think that I was mad. A brilliant piece of reasoning, as if I were not a man who sleeps at night and regularly has all the same experiences while asleep as madmen do while awake. Indeed, sometimes even more improbable ones. How often asleep at night am I convinced of just such familiar events that I'm here in my dressing gown, sitting by the fire, when in fact I'm lying undressed in bed. Yet, at the moment my eyes are certainly wide awake, and when I look at this piece of paper, I shake my head as it's not asleep. As I stretch out and feel my hands, I do so deliberately, and I know what I am doing, right? So Descartes is stopping and thinking, okay, maybe if I think that all of this stuff is made up, the pad of paper in my hand, my dressing gown, people would think I'm mad. But what about in dreams? In dreams, it sure seems like all the time I have this experience of thinking things that are happening that aren't really happening, right? But yet, even at the moment, my eyes are certainly wide awake. When I look at this piece of paper, I shake my head and it's not asleep. As I stretch out and feel my hands, I do so deliberately and I know what I'm doing. All this would not happen with such distinctness to someone who's asleep. Indeed, as if I did not remember other occasions when I've been tricked by exactly similar thoughts while asleep. As I think about this more carefully, I see plainly that there are never any sure signs by means of which being awake can be distinguished from being asleep. The result is that I begin to feel dazed, and this very feeling only reinforces the notion that I may be asleep. So Descartes realizes that there is nothing that he can use to determine when he's awake versus when he's asleep. Now, what do you think about this idea? Do you think that there's ways that we can know when we're asleep or when we're awake?